Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward, take it to the next level, and help others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as you know, on the Road to Rediscovery, we are very passionate about delivering quality content that is of value to you and your personal growth. If you like what you hear, please visit roadtorediscovery.com/donate. That's road, the number 2, rediscovery.com/donate. We'll give you a shout out in a future episode. But as always, there's no obligation. We are truly, truly grateful for your listenership. My special guest is an educator with close to 25 years in the capacities of classroom teacher, instructional coach, district curriculum specialist, and administrator. His book, Becoming the Change: 5 Essential Elements That Guide Each of Us Towards Becoming Our Best Selves, hones in on the 5 elements of social emotional learning, or SEL, which I will let him break down for you here soon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Dan Wolfe to the show. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, man.
Happy to be here, Aubrey. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a pleasure, man. So let's start off, if you don't mind, if we can share for the listeners, just give us a synopsis of, like, where did you get your inspiration for helping others become their best selves? I mean, was this something that extended from your career in education, or how did that come about?
Well, it actually started, my first experience of knowing, because I look at education and being an educator is like a calling.
Yeah.
I first heard that calling when I was in high school. We had a child development class my junior year. And within that class, we worked with pre-Kers. They'd come in 3 times a week. And then the other 2 days, we would go ahead and learn about how to write lesson plans and things like that. And then in the summers, what I do is I was a sports camp counselor working with, students and everything in elementary grades. And it was just something that I just like to have, being there to be able to support the kids and helping them really become their best self. And that just is what really kind of put me on the path towards education. And then I went from there to pursue my degree.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So there definitely is a tie over, bridging those two. So that's awesome. Now, if we can level set with the listeners before we dive into SCL, can you explain and define for the listeners social emotional learning?
Well, with social emotional learning, it is, we talk about all the different things that are on the plate of education. And with social emotional learning, it really is the plate. It's what has the support. You often might hear the Maslow before Bloom philosophy. We always hear about Bloom and the taxonomy and about the academics. But in order to get to that, you really need to have those Maslow hierarchy of needs to address first. And that's essentially what social emotional learning is. And it has 5 elements. And within those elements, you have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And it is something that it is not a separate curriculum. It's a part of everything that we're doing each and every day. And it has those tie-ins as well. Because we also not only want the children to be successful academically, but also, be good people and be able to serve others and make this world a better place. And that's what those strategies will help them do.
Wonderful. So, what relationship what relationship does social emotional learning have with, say, and you've heard this term before, emotional intelligence? I mean, are they the tools to develop emotional intelligence, or how do they play together?
Well, and actually with emotional intelligence, it all started from Daniel Goleman, and he wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence,
Hmm.
and that actually sparked everything around social emotional learning. And I'm sure the listeners might be familiar with Castle, who's a very big supporter of social emotional learning, and they actually have a lot of great resources for educators and for parents.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the emotional intelligence really stems from that self-management piece. I always try and tell the kids and everything, or teachers that I support, the situation's always going to be the situation, and the only thing we can control is our response to that situation.
That's right.
And that's where those self-management techniques come into, and a lot of really getting to not only with the self-awareness piece. When you're aware of your emotions, you then have to learn to regulate them, and that's where the self-management comes in. So each of these 5 elements go hand in hand, and they're always intertwined with one another.
Oh, that's great. That was actually one of my next questions. So, and we might as well just go to it now. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to know that they are interrelated, they are interconnected, and that sort of thing. So, um, and I apologize if it appears that I'm darting all over the place, but I want to go to your book if you don't mind. Is your book equipped to help someone, let's say, who may be strong in one of the 5 elements, but need development or maybe weak in another?
Yes, it does. What it
Hmm.
has within there is it has its own self-assessment around the
Hmm.
5 elements, and it's statements that the reader goes ahead and really honestly asks themselves, where do they feel that they're at this point in time in their lives. And
Right.
once they do that for each of the 5 elements, it will go ahead, you add up the totals for each of the elements,
Hmm.
and it's separated out. And based on that, you can see where your strengths are. And I never call them weaknesses; they're more or less limitations.
Gotcha.
And sometimes I know one thing that has often been said: the only limitations we have are the ones that we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
So, but with those, so for example, if my strength is in self awareness, and I want to go ahead and go deeper and reach that next higher tier
Hmm.
within it, then what I can go ahead and do is read that section of the book that will go ahead and give you strategies that are built around those questions. So it actually, you've already answered the question where you fall into those different categories, but now here's some tools or resources to kind of help you further enhance within that. And then throughout the book, I've got these checkpoints along the way, as far as on their road to their destination, to best help in that area. Now,
Hmm.
if they have areas of limitations, they can focus on those. And one of the things that I tried to do with this part of the book and everything, I don't know if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s,
Oh,
where
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so you would go ahead and get faced with, okay, if you turn to this page you're going to have this happen, or it
Hmm.
could be a dragon or something else at another page. Well, there's no dragons or anything in my book, but what it does is at the end of each chapter, it asks the reader, okay, you've just finished reading that chapter on whatever it might have been. Now you get to, because everyone's pathway is going to be different,
Right.
and the pathway that you have now could be different 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because you're at a different point in life. So
Yeah.
each time you take this, a self-assessment, you could fall in a different part. But what it's able to do with those questions, if I just finished reading, again, self-awareness is my strength,
Hmm.
I could do one of two things. I could go ahead and choose to reread that section again if I wanted to,
Right.
or go to an area. Maybe it's chapter 5, which is responsible decision making, and I can jump a couple chapters. I don't have to read it in order, because the book's not necessarily. I mean, you can read it in order too. I mean,
Right.
either way, it's going to work either way in regards to it. But it's your life, it's your pathway. You get to choose your own destiny of how you best want to go ahead and address it. So that's how the premise of the book is set up, because I wanted to. Lately, there's just so many traditional books, which again, nothing to take away from the traditional books. I wanted to kind of bring some of the old school back into it and kind of
Yeah.
make it have a little bit of excitement, where you could just jump into different parts and still, because it's your story, it's your narrative.
100%. 100%. It totally is, and it sounds great that the reader is able to jump into any chapter, that may apply to them. And there's two things with what you've described regarding this book, Dan, that points out to me. And if you can just kind of unpack it a little bit more, I'd appreciate it. The first thing is looking for or having the tools to be the change, as your book is titled. It looks like it takes a very inward approach, right? An introspective of asking yourself these questions, assessing yourself in these elements, right? So it's very introspective. That's one takeaway I've gathered, right?
Mhm.
And the second one is accountability. Is there a degree of accountability in that this book um, suggests to the reader when it comes to taking that hard look at yourself, when it comes um, to the limitations, as you put it, for developing an element that you have a limitation on. There's a degree of self awareness and humility, in my view, that one must have to take that hard look in the mirror and to, just say, hey, this is an area that I need further development in. This is a limitation of mine. Is there a degree of accountability that this book suggests as well?
Absolutely. Just like you get out of the book what you put into it, and
Hmm.
one of the biggest things, and probably one of the hardest things that um, as adults that we face is learning to be comfortable being vulnerable. And it's
Yes.
okay, and not to be perfectionists. I mean, and I can tell you, for in education, we don't always practice what we preach in regards to that, because we
Hmm.
tell everybody else it's okay to make those mistakes. We tell the kids that, but
Hmm.
then when it comes to us as our teaching, or me as an administrator, we make mistakes. I mean, we're human beings. That's what happened. But we hold ourselves to such a higher standard that when that happens,
Hmm.
we kind of beat ourselves up a little bit, and it's just um, making people realize, and making yourself realize, it's okay to have those mistakes. It's okay to. So over my career, I've become more comfortable telling people, if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you, but I'll find out the answer,
Hmm.
in regards to it, and just letting them know. Or if I make a mistake or something, I own up to it, because
Hmm.
that's just, to me, that just shows good quality leadership, and just being a good person in regards to it. So I think with the book and everything, um, if you take a hard look at things and you really put that into perspective, and you can go ahead and use the book for whatever you are within your career, or you can do it holistically with career and home life, because sometimes you might be stronger in some areas at home than you are at work, and vice versa. And so, one thing, we always try to be well rounded. That's what we try to be. And it's really just whatever we it's putting our best foot forward. And I know one of the things also within the book, that I have within there, it all the becoming the change, before it became that title, and it had the visual of a butterfly, because as we evolve as human beings, just like a caterpillar evolves into a butterfly. We're always changing, we're always growing, or we should
Right.
be.
Right.
um Before it became all of that, I had gone around. I'm a big person on quotes. I love reading quotes, and I always self reflect, and when you read a quote, today, and then you might read it 10 years from now, it could
Hmm.
have a totally different meaning, because you're at a different place in your life.
Oh, sure.
Well, the idea for the book, and like I have a blog and everything else, all that stuff was stemmed from, we in our district, we wanted to develop social emotional learning standards, kindergarten through 12th grade. So
Hmm.
I was a part of that curriculum work and everything, and you wanted to have a continuum, so those kids grow over time from kindergarten to 12th grade. And I happened to read a quote that morning, and I'm sitting in the meeting, and the quote was by Michelle Obama. And it says, "I have learned that as long as I hold fast to my beliefs and values and follow my own moral compass, then the only expectations I need to live up to are my own."
Mm.
For me, a light bulb just went off. The moral compass part. I said, you know
Yeah.
what? I said, there are five areas, five elements. I said, I'm visualizing a compass, And in the center of the compass is self-awareness. And then at the 4 cardinal directions are those four other elements. Because just as a compass,
Wow.
when we're lost in the woods or whatever, it helps
Yeah.
us find our way.
Yeah.
To me, that's what the moral compass does or symbolizes. When we're lost in our lives or whatever's going on, we might not have those 5 elements are within all of us when we just never even realized it, and they all, and that's why self-awareness is at the center, because even if you're heavy in some of the other areas, it's still connected to the self-awareness, and there's moments in our lives that we're leaning on others more than certain other ones, and that's just, we just adapt and adopt within there. But then that's where I had that whole idea kind of come together, which had kind of, just to give you a little origin story with that kind of led to the blogs where I take a famous quote, and then I analyze it and how it applies to what it means to me and what it applies to moral compass or the 5 elements. And then I ask the reader, what does it mean to you? And again, I look back now because I've written probably over 750 blogs since December of 2019 when I started. And I'll go back to reading the first one. And my first one was Michelle Obama's quote. And just where I was then and what I wrote and where I am now, though it's still a lot of the same things within there. There's things that are, my thoughts are a little bit different with things. And, and when I say different, it's also just deeper meaning, more growth behind it. And what I did within the book is I used those blogs for each of those different elements and strategically placed them in each of the chapters. And I called them compass checks, because what I wanted to do was have it break up the chapters. So then it kind of gives a little pause for the reader to kind of go ahead and digest. Okay, let's turn our attention to a quote. Let's read what Dan has to say in regards to it. Okay. And what does it mean to us, based on what we just read, with the quote. And that's kind of how I tied it all together. And then that's where the book eventually came from, was that, and just trying to, with all the things that were going on in the world in 2020, pandemic, everything that was going on, I just felt that it was just something that I felt I needed to write, even if I was the only one that saw it or my family saw it. And that was it, as long as I got my thoughts out there, because I'm all about leaving no stone unturned.
Gotcha. Man, I love it. I love it. I mean, and understanding your affection for quotes and how they, profound ones especially, can have an impact in your life. And I guess kind of causes you to take action, right? And the action that you're taking is in the direction of helping others. So it's like a ripple effect. It sounds like,
Right. Pay it
yeah.
forward.
Pay it forward, 100%. And one other thing that you mentioned there, Dan, that I found absolutely um, tremendous, because I'm in full total agreement in what you said there, was with that moral compass, right? Having self-awareness as the nucleus, if you will, right at the center. And I couldn't agree more. To me, that's foundational. I'm not sure, how much you've heard about the show, but here on the Road to Rediscovery, we talk about the 4 cornerstones to personal growth, and those cornerstones are self-awareness, humility, gratitude, and service to others. And they're all the cornerstones to personal growth. So when I talk about in my digital course and in the email, or the ebook, sorry, the those cornerstones, self-awareness is the very first one that I cover, because it is foundational. You have to have that and learn how to have it, or understand what it means to not have it. What behaviors are you following if you don't have self-awareness? Okay, now what are some best practices to obtain self-awareness or to become more self-aware? And once you have that, then you can be self-aware so that you can understand whether or not you're humble or whether or not you're grateful.
Right.
So I guess with all that said, I'm in total agreement with
Oh, yeah.
where you stand with self-awareness, for sure, man.
Absolutely. And I think it's all tied into, taking care of ourselves too before we can kind of help others. It's like
Hmm.
that the example of the oxygen mask on the plane, that the first reaction is to go ahead and try and put it on somebody else, but they tell
Hmm.
you put it on yourself first, then you can help others.
Yes.
Because, and so, I have a saying that
Hmm.
our greatest wealth is our own mental health. And that's
Mm.
just something we have to really hone in on and take care of. And just, just like everything else, just like we want to take care of ourselves physically and how what we eat and exercise and all those things, we need to do the same for our mental wellness as well.
Yeah, yeah, we totally do, without a doubt. And I'm a big fan of breaking things down. So now, if we can just talk about the first part of your book title, okay?
Sure.
And I believe this is also the name of your podcast, which I'd like to get to in a moment. But in the book, Becoming the Change, okay? How would you define change? And I guess change, quote unquote, change can be, I don't know, it's rather subjective, I guess, depending on whatever that change is for that person. Maybe personal goals, growth, and developments that we aspire to
Mhm.
realize our true potential. What, how would you define change as is explained in your book?
Change is going to be different for everybody, but I think the similarity that it will have, it's never ending.
Yes,
It is
correct.
something that, I mean, just like the moment that I feel that there's nothing else I can do in education or something, then I need to find something else as a career. There's always something to do. There's always somebody to help. There's always,
Hmm.
somebody to help pick up. And there's always things I can learn. We're always learning every day, or we should be. We should
That's right.
always be seeking to change. There's always something about ourselves that we can improve upon or get better, even if it is like I said, even if is a strength of self-awareness or whatever. Because we strive for perfection, and we're never really going to be perfect at anything. So to me, that's what gives that hunger, is just wanting to really be strong in all those areas.
Hmm.
It's being balanced.
Hmm.
Change is just constant evolution. I think of just ourselves. We're always improving, redefining. Our career path may change or whatever, but our ultimate focus or why or whatever hasn't. That is always, it's always staying the course. It's continuing to be our true self, in all the different areas, even in social awareness, being promoting empathy, not necessarily sympathy,
Hmm.
and looking
Hmm.
at it through the lens of others.
Hmm.
Just those kinds of things. And I mean, that's, if there's ever a change we need out of any of the five, in my humble opinion, would be social awareness as a society. I
Yeah.
still think we have a long ways to go
Mm.
in that area. Just not only just because of recent events that have happened, but just
Right.
it's just not where I thought it would be. If you had asked me this, like 5-10 years ago, I thought we'd be a lot further along. But
Yeah.
again, that's where the challenge lies. And that's where each of us have to take a stand for what's right, and to go ahead and be able to speak for the voiceless, or whatever you need to go ahead and do in regards to it, because it's the only way that things are going to get better.
True. So true. Which leads me to ask, uh, is there anything from, say, past generations, um, and past, the state of the world from, say, 40, 50, 60 years ago, um, in terms of social interaction, um, just social settings? Is there anything from that time that you feel that we could learn from, that should have either stuck around or we need to kind of resurrect today, if that makes sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, there are many examples over history where I think things have, and what happens is when things happen, or certain things, whether it's tragedies, whatever, or good things, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
it it's on the forefront of everybody's mind in the moment,
Hmm.
but then over time, it just kind of seems to wane, and it doesn't. there never seems to be action behind it, or
Right.
there's not enough action to really enact. We're taking baby steps with certain things, and it's I think what the problem is that we get in our own way.
Yeah.
There could be certain agendas,
Hmm.
certain things that just, whether it's money involved, and whether it's the political realm, whatever it might be,
Right.
and that gets in the way of what is right.
Mm.
I can say, just from the educator standpoint, of just with all the tragedies that have happened with the shootings,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the way back from Columbine, things like that. And we're still at this point of just, we haven't made any of the changes that needed to occur. There's still, and what I ask of, the those that are in power is, what if it was their children?
Right.
Because I'm a father,
Yeah.
and I couldn't imagine something like that happening to my daughter. And that's all that I thought of with all these recent events that have happened, and every unfortunate time it happens, even when it's not a school thing.
Yeah.
And I just, what if, and that's what that's why, when I mentioned social awareness, those that are in power, put that lens on right there, that it's your own child, it's your grandchild, or whatever. You better believe that certain laws or whatever else would be put in place to protect or whatever. And why isn't it? Why? What's I that's the part that it's very, everybody can say what we should be able to do as educators or whatever, but they don't really ask us what it is we think should be done,
Right.
as far as, and how we can keep everyone safe, and what our suggestions are. We're told what it should be, but it's like, I would never expect myself to go into a business and say, oh, I think all these different changes should happen. I don't know the first thing about that business world, and I wouldn't begin to go ahead and try and put my thoughts into it. I'd want to hear from the business people. Everybody's
Right.
got their level of expertise. I don't know. It just, when I talk to people about it, they're like, I know that it sounds like common sense, but it doesn't sound like common sense, if you know what I mean, just because
Yeah.
I feel like we're having the same conversations. And frankly, I'm tired of having the conversations. I want to have action behind the words.
That's
And
right.
if people really want to do something, do something about it. And
Yeah.
let's make this. Other countries have been able to do it. They have.
Yeah.
We hear about, so there's no reason why we can't do the same. There's no reason. So,
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
yeah.
And I mean, being a father, um, just the thought of what happened in the school setting,
Mm-hmm.
in Uvalde, as well as at the grocery store in Buffalo, right?
Right.
Mhm.
It's horrifying and terrifying, and quite frankly, the unthinkable. It really is the unthinkable. And as you mentioned that, Dan, what's going through my head, I don't know why it's going through my head. I'm in agreement as far as taking action and everything, but what's going through my head is, all right, how frequent did we hear, or how frequent was it in the news 50, 60 years ago of something like this happening? I don't know. I wasn't around then,
Mm-hmm.
or I was very young, either way. But it's like, okay, if it wasn't happening then and it's happening now, what deficiency in social awareness has this society taken, or has come upon this society, to where it's resulting in these types of tragedies
Mm-hmm.
that didn't transpire in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s? Now, segregation and breaking down those barriers of segregation, that's a horse of a different color, because there's a
Right.
much larger narrative behind that with civil rights and so forth, right?
Right.
And not to diminish or to discount anything in what we're talking about, but from a social awareness standpoint, it truly feels like there's something we lost, or something that we no longer have a grasp on. I'll give you another real quick example here, Dan. In
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, again, my humble opinion,
Right.
I feel that, and I'm going to go on both ends of the spectrum. Okay. I'm 54. So let's say someone who's in their 70s, okay, versus someone who's in their teens. And I don't want to generalize. I'm not going to say everyone's like this, but someone in their 70s you have on this side, someone in their teens you have on this side.
Mhm.
When it comes to sitting down and just having a conversation, you know, who would who would feel more comfortable and be more versed in having a conversation, knowing what to say,
Right.
physically connecting with, you see, you touch,
Yeah.
you talk, you speak, you're face to face, and technology obviously would sometimes, get in the way of people knowing what it's like to, see each other face to face. And that's my thought. And I'm not generalizing. I'm not saying all teens are like that. I'm not saying
Right.
all adults are like that, or senior citizens. But senior citizens lived at a time where there were no video games, there were no cell phones, there were no tablets,
Mhm.
right? So their form of entertainment was each other, you know
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
But
and
yeah.
so with that, that's one less element that you have in terms of propaganda and all this other stuff. Which again, it's a rabbit hole we can go down,
Well,
but
yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you had even just said, even just like where we are with voters' rights and just rights of, just everybody. It's just it's not where it should be. And you'd
No.
mentioned a lot with like the I think also social media has definitely changed the game a lot in regards to it. And I think that because it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
and you sometimes wonder with the the coverage and everything, what is the ultimate goal of getting things out of it? Is it just to continue to keep it in the news because you're keeping it in the news, or are we going to do something about it? it's
Right.
it's just like the more we're talking about it, it's just more talk. And it's just but like even the example you just gave, I mean, to me, those teenagers should be asking the 70-year-olds, what was it like to be able to
100
understand and be
100%.
able to
Yes.
close those gaps. And I mean, I will go ahead and ask my friends of different nationalities, different
Yes.
races, and I want to understand so that I could be more of an advocate of whatever to support. What is it that what I mean, to just
Yes. Yes.
and I mean, again, I'm just speaking for myself because there's so much that I don't know about it, and I will never assume to, and I'd rather just understand. And that's why I'm also I'm a big reader and go
Yes.
ahead and reading different biographies and things like that. Whether it's John Lewis, or I just finished reading his book and Walk with the Wind. Love that
Mm,
book. It was
mhm.
just to understand what it was like going across the bridge and all the challenges that he faced and the stories. And it made me understand things and just appreciate all that he and other people alongside him had gone through and got to
Yeah.
this point today. And it just, for me, it closes my own gaps and it's just because we all have gaps. There's different areas of whatever, and that's why even just to kind of turn around within the education,
Yeah.
well, like I work at a Title I school where it's families of low socio economic status,
Mhm.
and so I have anywhere between 80 to 90% of the families on free and reduced lunch and
Mhm.
things like that.
Mhm.
And I try to let the teachers know and everything. All right, so like they come in and let's say they never bring in their homework or whatever, but they're
Right.
there.
Right.
I let the teacher know you've got to celebrate that win there. You don't know what they might be going through outside. They could be
Right.
living in a hotel, living in a car, or whatever, but
Mhm.
they are there, they're present. Tell them that you appreciate them being there. Don't let them fall down the wayside and being another statistic, because
That's
they
right.
are more than a number.
That's
And
right.
it's just that's what I tell some of the kids. I
Mhm.
say, because they're just like, Mr. Wolf, I don't know if I'm ever going to get out of, my situation. And I said, you're going to prevent yourself from it. I said, you can get out of it. You rely on people, your teachers, me, whatever. You just stay the path that you want to go on, and you
Mhm.
will overcome. You will rise above.
Mhm.
And just because of what your past may be or how your current situation is, that doesn't define you. Just
No,
like these state tests and everything, they're just a number. You're not a number. You're a person. You're more than that. So
that's right.
sorry.
That's
So
right.
just bringing that around. Sorry, I got a little long-winded.
No,
Let me
no,
fast
that's
forward in that
okay. No,
area. So
no,
yeah.
I love the passion, and you're absolutely true. These children, they are not a number. I
Mhm.
mean, they're a true living, breathing person that has potential to contribute to the growth of this country, of this world, to make the world a better place, to make
Absolutely.
change. Right? Yeah, yeah. So, and my wife, she's a retired educator of 23 years through inner city schools,
Mhm.
principal and teacher. So I have to say, Dan, I commend you for taking on the amazing responsibility of just contributing to the growth of the world by imparting knowledge on the future, right? On the children
Mhm.
who will grow to contribute to this world. So that is a big responsibility that I don't take lightly at all, and just have to commend you for your work on that, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, absolutely,
Well worth
absolutely.
it. It's well worth it each and every day.
Hmm.
Every day is a new opportunity. It's the way I look at it. May not always go the way you plan each day, but
Right.
you got the next day. So
Oh yeah, there's always the next day,
absolutely.
and I was going to ask you that real quick.
No.
Um, what gets you up in the morning? What I mean, you could have the worst day the night before or the day before, where I don't know, there may have been some unruliness amongst the students. You may have had some disagreements with other faculty members that, things may not have fell into place as they should have, or you would expect at the beginning of that day. And then you go home and you're just beat, right?
Mhm.
And you spend time with family, you have dinner, you watch a little TV, check the mail, and then, you go to sleep. What gets you up that next day ready to grab the bull by the horns and go back into your place of work?
Well, there's three words that I live by, and it's actually part of my Twitter handle and everything. It's
Hmm.
serve, lead, and inspire.
Mm.
And that is what gets me up in the morning. I actually, other than the alarm when it goes off, but
Right.
when the alarm goes off, I actually have within there, when I look at it and turn it off, I've got the three words within my phone that
Mm.
when it goes off, it says serve, lead, and inspire. So
Hmm.
that just gets me going, and I know what I need to go ahead and do. In that, again, I believe in the servant leadership mindset.
Hmm.
And one of the things is, as far as like, no matter how rough the day was the day before or whatever, and it could be even within the same day,
Yeah.
it's important to hit that reset button. It's a
Hmm.
fresh start. And it's the same thing that I try to tell our teachers, I tell our students. So even if a student has a rough day and they make, some not the best choices in the world, I said that I always let them know there's tomorrow. It's a
Yep.
brand new start,
Hmm.
and you've got to remember that. Or even if it's something that happened in the morning, they have the afternoon to turn things around. There's always those opportunities. The question is, are you going to take it? And one of the
Right.
sayings that I always had in my classroom, and that I have with the kids too, is if it's to be, it's up to me.
Mm.
And
Love it.
anything in
Yeah.
life, I tell them,
Hmm.
nothing's going to come to you on a silver platter, and they're not going to go ahead. Someone's going to say, "Oh, here it is. Here's everything you ever wanted, your hopes, your dreams." You got to
That's
go
right.
out. You got to go out and get it. And it's just, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
We go through this life once, and you want to make the most of it, because you don't know, how much time you have on this earth, and you want to make sure that each and every day you just have that impact, because that, to me, um, it's that side of things where how it's like Maya Angelou's quote about how it makes you feel, how you make people feel.
Yeah.
Um, that's my biggest thing is I want people to remember how I made them feel in their job, as a student, a
Hmm.
parent, whatever, because if I had that impact,
Right.
that could then be that domino effect to be able to go out to other people. And you
Mm.
can't ask for a better thing, because you can't go with the money you've made or anything else like that, but you
Right.
can leave that kind of legacy, for others to hopefully take that torch and run with it.
Yeah, and that is the true meaning of life, in my view. It's that legacy, right? Because uh, that is what's going to help navigate and guide uh, those people, the
Mhm.
world. The
Right.
legacy you leave behind, and the impact that you've had on others, and how you made them feel. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that, Dan.
Mhm.
Let's quickly talk about your podcast. It's called the Be the Change podcast, right?
Yeah, but yeah, Becoming the Change podcast, and
Becoming the
again,
Change.
everything. Yep, and everything used to be Our Moral Compass, but then when I changed it for the book title, I decided just to kind of do it for everything, Becoming the Change, because just like everything else, so did the blog and the podcast evolve. And basically, with the podcast, what it is it's me reading past blogs that I've already written.
Hmm.
So I've got around 550 podcasts of whatever I've written out of like the 750. So
Hmm. Hmm.
and what I hope to do as a thing to, now that the book's out and everything,
Hmm.
is to eventually kind of spread my wings a little bit and be able to have guests on the and start like a kind of like a show to go ahead around the Becoming the Change, of how they've become the change in their own lives as whatever profession. It doesn't have to be just education, it can be anything. Because
Hmm.
again, I'm seeking that social awareness. I'm seeking to understand others in the different fields and how they're making an impact on the world, because that's the biggest thing. We talked about all the negativity that's out there on, whether it's social media or all those things within there, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of good things that are happening too. And I don't think those things are celebrated or highlighted enough as they should be. The
Very
great
true.
things that are happening in education. And
Yeah.
again, it's not about test scores, but let's just say a child that had a hard time controlling themselves emotionally now can do that. They can self regulate. That's a huge win. To
Hmm.
me, that'll beat any test score any day of the week, because they're going to be able to contribute to society. It's just those kind of successes, what teachers do, what administrators do, districts, all those things, and just I think highlighting those things. And I said this might be a way to be able to share that out, is to continue to, becoming that change, for sure. So that's where I'm kind of seeing the podcast going,
Yeah. Yeah.
so as that evolves.
Very nice. Very nice. And yeah, I'd love to see that take shape. I'm going to subscribe to your podcast, by the way. And Dan, as we're closing or near closing, if you can tell me in 5 words, in 5 simple words, um, what you expect or what you hope for your readers to get out of the book, what would those 5 words be?
I think it's probably going to be in 4 words. So it's probably
Okay.
becoming your best self.
Love it.
And and the biggest thing is with that is everybody's best self is going to be different. It's what they bring to the table. It's
Hmm.
just like the 52 football players that bring it to the field. They're bringing their best self, what they can contribute. You're
That's
doing your best. You're bringing your A game to be your best self in your game of life, and that's what it is, because that's the ultimate test.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you put all those people together on that team or in this world, putting their best self forward exponentially. I mean, you know, the sky's the limit. I mean, we can achieve anything and help make the world a better place if everyone puts their best self forward. I totally agree.
Absolutely, and I just thought of something too, just with the your podcast being the road to rediscovery. I feel like the with becoming the change, it is part of that road to rediscovery of discovering yourself.
Hmm.
And we're always rediscovering new things about ourselves as we go on this, this pathway of life, and I think that's, and I just thought of that as we were just talking and everything, and just made that connection. I think that's another connection right there for sure.
Yeah, it is. That's a great connection, and thank you for sharing that because that is absolutely true. We are on a road, and we have those times to reflect further down the future of certain events. We can pick up, anecdotes from an event. 10 years down the line, think about it again, pick up something else. So Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. So, Dan, how can the listeners pick up a copy of your book and subscribe to your podcast and follow you on your blog?
Okay. All right. So the book is currently on Amazon. So if you just go to
Mhm.
Amazon and just put in Becoming the Change, and you can probably put my name, Dan Wolfe, it should pop up.
Mhm.
I should know because I tried it a couple times just to see it, because I said this is my first book, so it's kind of exciting to actually see that. And
Yeah.
just for the listeners, just so you know, just never give up, always persevere.
Hmm.
I had over 40 rejections before my publisher, Road to Awesome, took a chance on me, which I'm forever grateful. So just don't ever give up on your dreams. Also, for the blog, it's the website is called Becoming the Change.
Hmm.
Um, and they're in between becoming and the and change are the little hashtags, or not hashtags, little lines in between it, just so becomingthechange.com. And
Hmm.
then the podcast itself is on Spotify or Apple. So those are the
Wonderful.
two. So
Wonderful. So, Dan, we're going to have direct links to the blog, the website, and the podcast um, in the episode show notes. So the listeners can click and connect with you while they're listening to this awesome conversation.
okay.
And we'll definitely have those links in there. Dan Wolfe, thank you so much for joining me and connecting with me and the listeners today. Just sharing your insights based on your journey, based on your experiences and your expertise. So thanks again for coming on the show, Dan.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And look, if you have a loved one or a colleague or a friend who seems to be just down on their down in their mood, um, going through dark days, just a cloud of despair over them, not quite sure where to turn to or who to turn to or what to do next. I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, we want our listeners to know two things. Number one, you're not alone. And number two, there is always hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have. The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.